Jack kissing feet with cheese on them, and also meth gators.
All right. Also, the Lakers fans that may already be nervous, Anthony Davis ain't gonna stay there?
Yeah, no, they are shook. And also we'll find out who thinks Matt Stafford is better than Russell Wilson.
Apparently there's someone who does.
There is.
A little silly, but first, Ezekiel Elliott. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, has a source who said Elliott has privately told people he'll hold out at training camp unless he gets a new contract. Charles Robinson of Yahoo says Elliott hasn't made a decision on the matter yet. Elliott's going into his fourth season, and he'll get the ball a lot. And when his contract is up, those carriers will be a reason Jerry Jones won't want to break the bank for his future. But if Elliott doesn't report to training camp by August 6th, he won't accrue this season toward unrestricted free agency. Pablo, what should Elliott do?
He should make the case for himself in as strong and threatening terms as possible in the present tense, which does mean threatening a holdout. And the case for him is really strong. Over the last 3 years, nobody in the NFL has more rushing yards or total yards, and he did miss 8 games when he was suspended in 2017. So, here's the issue. The issue is that who is number 2 on those lists in those categories? Todd Gurley. And Todd Gurley, who just signed that record-setting deal. Todd Gurley, who just revealed that he has arthritis in his knee. He doesn't want to admit it. And Todd Gurley, who was capably replaced by C.J. Anderson in the postseason. That is the case against Zeke Elliott, essentially.
Well, see, the case against him, if you're saying it's C.J. Anderson, I disagree there. There were a couple decent games that C.J. Anderson had, but the Super Bowl did not look as though he was being capably replaced, right? The case that Elliott can make is that I am the centerpiece of this offense. It all revolves around me. However, threatening to hold out, what is that? What team in the NFL is shook by the threat of a holdout? They're not even really that shook by holdouts themselves. You got to be willing to sit out and miss some games and do something that's going to affect the actual future of the Cowboys in this season. If you're not willing to do that, then you need to take your habit behind in there well in advance and get ready to go work it out. But if you're willing to go to the mattresses behind this, that's the chance that you have. One of the most effective holdouts of all time. Jerry Jones is on the business end of it. The Emmitt Smith holdout of 1993, where they weren't going to give him the money, and then they lost those 2 games, and they had to crack that thing open.
And Emmitt Smith is an instructive name to bring up here because it does feel like the Cowboys are trying to figure out, is Zeke Elliott Emmitt Smith? Is he a guy we can keep throwing work at? The workload that Emmitt Smith had over cycles of contracts, over a decade, was the best they could possibly imagine. Or is he somewhere maybe a little bit closer to DeMarco Murray, who had the highest workload in NFL history, and they wore him into the ground, and then they let him go, even if he is the franchise leader in terms of the single-season rushing record.
Yeah, but see, that's where it gets interesting, though, because the big difference is, I think the line is 370 carries. That once you start giving guys 370 carries, what they do on the other side of that is typically going to be in some level of decline. That's what they did with Murray, where they just overloaded him in that 1 year, and you wondered if he had nothing left. He turned out to still have something, not a great deal necessarily, but it's not that wise to pump that much money into a running back, especially in their situation where they're going to have to pay Prescott because he's a quarterback. They got to pay Cooper to justify that trade. But what are any of those guys if they're not the offense that they are with that dude in the front of it?
Up next, it's Golden Tate. Because the Giants receiver told Detroit's WDIV that the best quarterback he's ever played with is Matt Stafford. Which is notable because Tate won a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson, and Stafford has never won a playoff game. Quote, if you put Stafford in another organization, maybe things are different. Bo, those are Tate's words. Do his QB ratings make any sense?
I can totally see someone saying that if they play wide receiver, because Russell is a dynamic quarterback and he does a lot of things on the move. But if you're a guy that's like, I want to put my toe on the ground, cutting, and the ball's going to be right there, that's not what Russell Wilson is. What Matthew Stafford is, quite possibly the most gifted passer any of us have ever seen, just in terms of just strictly throwing the ball. That is what he does well. He's also been in Detroit without much of a running game behind him. He's got a whole career that lends itself very well to what if and excuses as to why it is he hasn't been as good as people thought that they were. Except I have a really hard time riding out with what if guy over guy with all these receipts.
I have a really hard time riding out with Golden Tate as someone whose Yelp review of the Seahawks I even want to read. He had a very strange experience there, and it was a strange experience that culminated in him wanting like a modest, reasonable raise. And Seattle basically saying, no, we want you all the way out of here. And so what does he do? He goes to the Lions. What do the Lions do? They give him the big raise. They give him Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford targets him 144 times in that first season, I believe. That is a personal dream achieved for Golden Tate. So I get that it's a very personal question that he answered personally, but that's not objective in any way.
But it's also worth noting that he played with a very young Russell Wilson. Like, the Russell Wilson that we get now is not the Russell Wilson that he played with. He probably played with the best version of Matt Stafford that anybody had played with. But no, I don't think he's right. I think there's no way that anybody would say at this point, at least they got any good sense, that he's right. I'm just saying I can see it, even if he didn't give him the ball 144 times the first year that they played together. I could see why he would be the guy who would be the one to say this. And I tell you this, I bet there is no shortage of general managers that if you gave them the choice, they would take Matt Stafford over Russell Wilson. Coincidentally, we spend a lot of time on these shows talking about how these general managers don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, qualitatively, quantitatively, in terms of even the most caveman-friendly accomplishments like Super Bowls and playoff wins, it's not particularly close, unless you are a slot receiver who doesn't like it when that guy tends to run around all the time.
The other thing, though, no offense has really been built around Russell Wilson in the way they do this with Stafford. It is fair to say that there's been no Marshawn Lynch to lean on. They've asked that dude to do more than Russell Wilson has typically been asked to do. Not D'Angelo Russell, who's a Warrior for now. Russell has seemed resigned to the possibility his greatest value to the Warriors was as a trade asset and that he might not play in San Francisco for long. On Monday, though, Warriors general manager Bob Myers said, quote, "We didn't sign him with the intention of just trading him." Pablo, you buying that?
I am buying that the word just in that sentence is doing a lot of legally defensible work. Because sure, they want to actually play him this season. They do. They need D'Angelo Russell because Klay Thompson is not somebody who is ambulatory at the current moment. But he can walk around. He can't walk around.
Yeah,
So Bomani, yes, technically it's true, but D'Angelo Russell, man, you put it. He knows he's an asset first and foremost because Klay Thompson will come back and he will be able to walk again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think trading him is plan A, but it's definitely plan B. So when he says, yeah, we did not get him just to trade him, I do think that's correct. I think they hope the best case scenario is that D'Angelo Russell is an all-star. And I think I understand why people believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be that. He's also a dude who spent a lot of time in an offense running pick and roll, who now goes to the team that runs the least pick and roll in the NBA, right? It does not seem to be a great fit. It seems to be the logical conclusion of this that they will ultimately trade him. I'm not quite on the Klay Thompson's going to be back and everything's okay program, though. Like, Klay Thompson will come back, and Klay Thompson, though, is older than he was before, and he is coming off of some sort of ACL injury. And even with Klay Thompson there, they probably need somebody else like D'Angelo Russell. So, like, to me, that's not the line about this. It's just a matter of whether that dude's a fit for what the Warriors actually want to do.
I do feel like when D'Angelo Russell is playing with Draymond Green, they will do more pick and roll stuff. I would imagine that it's kind of the only thing they really have faith in his ability to do, because even as a three-point shooter, not the most accurate guy, but can get his own shot in that way. But come February, Bo, when Klay Thompson is back and the ACL is better to recover from than the Achilles, thankfully for the Warriors, I do think they're going to have a logjam at that position. And at that point, what does D'Angelo Russell become? A guy who can get you something else that you need.
Is that a logjam, though? Curry, Russell, Thompson, Green, and whoever you want to put at five. Like, Klay,
you can't play all three is the issue at
51st. Wow, I tried to make it 55. 51st birthday, Barry Sanders?
Yes, a guy who was ahead of his time in so many ways. A guy, when you watch his highlights, by the way, you're like, yeah, he could obviously play today. He's not one of those guys we do that to.
That's deep.
Thank you.
Quote, I don't know what's going to happen. I have 1 year here, so I'm going to make the best of this year. Said Anthony Davis to Rachel Nichols. Let's listen to the Brow explain.
Do you think you will be a pillar of the Lakers for years and years to come?
Honestly, Rachel, I'm just focused on this season. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I have 1 year here, so I'm going to make the best of this year. And when that time comes around in, you know, the summer or, you know, whenever the season's over, hopefully around, you know, mid-June, you know, after we just had this parade and, you know, I need a couple of days to think, you know, then we can, you know, talk about that.
Pablo, you see him ditching LA after a year?
I don't, and it's funny to contemplate this now after he's given every signal that A, he's really in on entertainment in Hollywood, and B, he's really in on this team going all in on him being a long-term Laker. However, what do you need if you're Anthony Davis and LeBron James and Clutch? You still want to maintain power and leverage over your employer, and this is one way to do it. To remind Rob Pelinka, your job is not over yet.
Even if they're not doing that, which I do think that they are doing, even if they're not doing it, What's the gain of saying this now? There's no telling what happens in the interim. There's even like the slightly off chance that you say, I want to stay here forever. And they're like, nah, we'd actually rather that you leave. Like, there's no good look in that one. I do think he wants to stay there for a long time for all the reasons he wanted to go there in the first place. The fact that everybody said if it happened in free agency, he would wind up going there at all. We all know that. But if you're his agent, you can't just go in there throwing it all around there willy-nilly. You need to let them know it. Act like you might not want to. That's all.
Yeah, and Anthony Davis could have done Rob Pelinka the courtesy of lying about this. Suppose that he could have been like Kyrie Irving and said, nope, I am here. The Lakers are my home. We're going to build from there. But he did not do Rob Pelinka that favor. And it's telling, right? You mentioned Anthony Davis's agent. Rob Pelinka is himself a former agent. And they all know exactly how Rob Pelinka operates. Anthony Davis was telling Rachel that Rob Pelinka was calling him like every 30, 45 minutes during free agency, checking in on what he wanted. A very agenty thing to do. And that's ways to get him even more in your pocket.
Yeah, but also, like, when you say in talking about this, just kind of the idea that maybe, just maybe, he could leave. I'm trying to think what it would take. What would it take for Anthony Davis to look at the Lakers and be like, no, actually, I'm not going to stay here? Because, I mean, for what it's worth, we thought Dwight Howard would be guaranteed to stick around there, too. He just had the Kobe problem. What could possibly happen to make Anthony Davis decide he wants to go somewhere else? It's
a fair question, but this is the franchise that just had Magic Johnson give a press conference that was truly unimaginable, in which he went and left the organization because of backstabbing. What if Phil Jackson were to emerge from the scenes in the background and be like, you know what? I actually have a lot more power than LeBron James might have thought.
That's going to make Anthony Davis leave. I think you forgot the question.
Well, Anthony Davis and LeBron James are kind of... But our next quote... He's got to win the job first. If he wins the job, then we'll talk about that. Said Oklahoma coach Lincoln Riley about whether Jalen Hurts will be his starting quarterback. Bo, he has to start Jalen Hurts, right?
Why?
Because he's Jalen Hurts. His heart was broken in Alabama. He comes to get the thing that he didn't have there, which is a starting job.
And what that got to do with them, right? I mean, like, I think it's highly likely that he winds up being the starting quarterback for Oklahoma. They got a 5-star recruit named Spencer Rattler that's coming in. Now, maybe that guy ultimately wins the job, but the one thing you have to do if you're Lincoln Riley, if you want to keep getting 5-star type recruits to come in, everybody has to walk in at least with the belief and the possibility that they can win a job. So I expect Hurts to be the starter, but I would not be surprised if he wasn't.
I expect this to be Lincoln Riley's public position simply because you're right. He needs to go recruit the guys after Jalen Hurts, the guys who will be there for longer than Jalen Hurts will be as the grad transfer who's in for one season. However, if you are thinking strategically about how your quarterback situation goes, don't you want to start with Jalen Hurts and then if he falters, you move to the number one dual threat prospect in Spencer Rattler? Because to do it the other way around just seems to be inviting even more chaos and controversy.
I don't really see a difference between doing one or the other. Like, whoever's the better quarterback coming out of training camp, that's going to be the guy who starts, right? And if that guy then does falter, although I don't think we've seen a quarterback falter yet under Riley, if that guy does falter, then you go ahead and make the switch. But I think no matter what, if you're making a change in the middle of the season, there's going to be some measure of chaos, and you're dealing with two dudes who are new to the program. So it's not like somebody's entrenched and then you got to move them out. My guess, though, is Jalen Hurts is a grown man. If anything anybody's had to say about him, it has been about his leadership and all of those things. That's probably the guy that if he's even close in terms of talent is going to start over the true freshman.
And Jalen Hurts is also, to his credit, talked about his weaknesses. All the Alabama coaches praise him for being a guy who recognized, I was leaving the pocket too early. My footwork, my eyes were unfocused. He fixed that seemingly, and they'll benefit in Oklahoma.
Are we sure he fixed it? He hadn't been really playing.
Well, against
Coming up next, Phil Mickelson did a 6-day fast at Meth Gators.
It will. It'll never be done again.
Not just Steve Kerr, though. Eric Spoelstra, his feet also deserve some kissing. Yes, the half Filipino champion at that, but we have more foot content, Bo, as we sometimes do on our program.
As you sometimes do.
This, I gotta say, that's gross. That is beyond the pale, even for me, and my pale's pretty gross.
It's not even like lazy, because I feel like that takes more work than it looks like it does.
It's impressive, but yeah.
That's not the word.
Well, prehensile. First number, $20 million. Because that is how much the Rockets would absorb in a tax bill if they acquired Andre Iguodala, according to Shams Charania, who reports that the Rockets and Clippers are strongly pursuing Iguodala. Bo, how big of an addition with this veteran be to a contender?
I don't know. Veteran is kind of, sort of euphemism for old in this case. It'll be in his 16th year in the league. Yeah, we got that. It'll be in the 16th year in the league. What are you getting out of him? The 2018 season, he shot 28% from three. Last year, he shot 33% from three. He can still guard some people, but you also get toward the end of the year, and his body starts breaking down. We've seen this happen a few times in the course of the last few years. So you get him because you can, but I don't feel like this is something that changes anything.
No, I don't think it makes anybody an automatic contender by any means on his own, but he is a guy who is available, and he's a guy who adds value because he is somebody who can defend someone like LeBron James, and he can't shut down LeBron James, but on a relative basis, that it would be his job. And the other thing is, it just costs money to get him at this point. And so if you're Tillman Fertitta, the real question is, are you prepared to get into one of these financial wars with Steve Ballmer, who is a lot richer than you?
Yeah, I mean, but a lot richer, but at the point that we're talking about both of them being rich, this is not going to come down to, damn, I can't afford it, right? The question I've got, though, about Iguodala is, yeah, he can guard LeBron. He could guard LeBron. We can't keep assuming a guy at that age can do things just because the next successive year has arrived. And that's where I don't know. Like, how do you keep betting on a player that's going into his 16th year in the league? I don't know that.
But if you are Steve Ballmer, who has none of the concerns about the luxury tax that Fertitta has had, you put him and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard together, it's a pretty good recipe for stopping one LeBron.
6. Because after missing the cut in 4 of his past 6 starts, Phil Mickelson posted an IG video this weekend saying he needed a, quote, hard reset. Let's watch him explain what that entailed.
I haven't posted anything because I haven't felt good about myself and the way I've been playing, and so I haven't done anything or wanted to be in public. The last 10 days, I've done what I call a hard reset, to change and try to make things better. I have lost 15 pounds. I've done a 6-day fast with water and a special coffee blend for wellness that I've been working on with Dave Phillips. And I don't know if it's going to help me play better or not, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to try to get my best back. I'll have more fireside chats and some funny things in the future, but for now, let's keep it real.
Probably a surprised person in Phil's position would try something this drastic, this close to a major.
I had not seen how that video ended, and this just sounds like sponsored content. It really does sound like Phil Mickelson promoting himself, and I gotta say, I have already been buying what he's been selling. I haven't eaten today. I intermittently fast. This is something that I've been doing because I too have concerns about how I look on television, and also because I do think it makes some sort of health sense.
Once he said, I'm working on this coffee blend, the game was given away at that point. Once he said, this coffee blend I'm working on with my buddy. They're not doing that just so they can have it for themselves unless it's got something illegal in it. The only thing I would say to you about buying what Phil Mickelson is selling, I don't know if you've noticed, but people that buy and sell with Phil Mickelson have this unfortunate tendency to wind up in federal court. So you do that if that's what you want to do, right? I would suggest you chill out, though. Thank you for telling us about your fasting program.
Yeah, Charles Peach, our producer, got me on
I didn't
it.
mean to talk about it more.
But it's something that people should know about. But by the way, on the scale of weird things that athletes do, like, is this weirder than Tom Brady's guy selling, like, cures for cancer? Is it weirder than Novak Djokovic's guy talking about telekinesis? Phil Mickelson being on a program of yoga and fasting and flexibility, it's all fairly reasonable. It's just weird because it's golf, and golf has John Daly, and also an Asian John Daly, that guy, Affy Barnrat.
What are you talking about?
There are these rotund dudes who don't need to fast at all, and they're incredible.
Somebody hit the bell, please.
A bell could be used in a ceremony, like yoga.
In closing,